Good evening and welcome to Oceanside Library's virtual program with the Mental Health and Wellness Clinic at Molloy College. We're so lucky to have partnered with this organization. They always bring such wonderful mental health programs to our community. Tonight, I'd like to introduce our hosts, Kellyanne Brady and Francesca. Francesca, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name. So you guys can take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Okaria. So welcome everyone to When Good Tidings and Cheer Doesn't Feel So Cheerful. We're going to be talking today about how to cope with the holidays and dealing with the winter blues. It's been a tough year, and the holidays are going to seem a little different this year. So I think that this is much needed discussion that we have so that we can all maintain our emotional and mental wellness as we go through the next couple of months. Francesca, you can go to the next slide. So a little bit about who we are. So Okaria mentioned that I'm Kellyanne Brady. I'm the clinic director at the Mental Health and Wellness Center at Molloy College. And just to give you some background information on who we are, we're a community mental health center that offers a wide range of mental health services to the community, including individual counseling, couples counseling, family counseling, and we serve people of all ages. And our goal is to provide affordable and accessible mental health services in an effort to reach those who need these services, and also to reduce stigma by promoting wellness. And one of the ways that we do that is by promoting wellness workshops such as this one tonight. So we hope you enjoyed this program, and I'm going to turn over it to Francesca Janello, who is one of the interns with the mental health counseling department. She's a student in the clinical portion of her clinical mental health counseling program at Molloy College, finishing up her clinical experience this year. So Francesca, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Brady. Hi, it's good to be with all of you. So tonight I put up a group agenda just so we have a sense of what this hour will be. It's nice when we have a small group because it can sort of be catered to what you want to hear and talk about. But we'll start with a brief introduction, and then we'll talk a little bit about what are the holiday blues as compared to some other things and sort of identifying the causes. When the holiday blues become something else, so sort of when to seek help, as well as what we can do to support ourselves during this time, maybe creating new rituals, old rituals, and then we'll end with a grounding exercise so that can be replicated by you if it's something that you find useful. So just wanted to do some group rules before we begin. So you can certainly participate however you feel comfortable, right? So camera, mics, whatever you want to do. If you do want to speak, I would ask that you use the hand raise function. You can also use the chat if that's something that you're more comfortable using. And if you're going to participate, would just ask to be respectful of everybody in the group and what they share, and just to be mindful, this is a workshop. So make sure that whatever you do share is appropriate for this space. So the first thing I want to do is a drama therapy activity, which I realize those words might sound a little bit foreign. So drama therapy is essentially an embodied way of doing therapy. So we use theater, we use metaphor, we use storytelling, and lots of elements of theater. So this is just a brief introduction that will be informed by those things. And since we have cameras off right now, I'm going to modify it to use the chat. So this is some sociometry. It's just a way of getting to know who is in the room to your comfort level. So what we can do is I'll ask a question, and if that's true for you, you can put your response in the chat. So the first question I have is, is this your first time coming to a group at Oceanside Library? So if you're willing, you can put in the chat yes or no, and then Dr. Brady, you can let me know the response because I can't see.
So we have 2 no's and 3 no's and 2 yeses.
Cool. So we have a mixed group. The second question is this your first time attending a group that addresses anything related to mental health?
Looks like 3 no's and 1 yes.
Okay. And next question, which I think I'll know the answer to, is this anyone's first time on Zoom?
No.
Okay. And then lastly,
No 2 in there.
okay. Lastly, is this the first time that this first season that anyone's really feeling the holiday blues? I know this can be a tough time of year for many people. And for others, this is the first time we're sort of experiencing it because of the pandemic. Yeah, that's the question. Is this your first time sort of navigating these waters of the holiday blues?
We have mixed responses here. We have 3 yeses and 2 nos.
Okay. So I hope then, that we'll be able to sort of cater this to your needs. And I do have some time built in for, sharing and asking questions, but I want to say that at any point you can ask a question in the chat or raise your hand and speak if you would like to do so. So let's sort of start by defining what the holiday blues are, right? Oops, sorry about that. So the National Alliance for Mental Illness, or NAMI, describes it as temporary feelings of anxiety or depression that come up during the holidays, which mostly happens between Thanksgiving and New Year's. The feelings that can come up, which it can look like many things, but some things that are more common are feelings of anxiety or depression, a feeling of loneliness, hard time sleeping, feeling extra tired, extra stressed out, having a hard time concentrating, and just feeling a little bit less interested in the things that you would normally want to do, and maybe a feeling of indecision. So I want to say that this is different from mental health conditions because typically when we're talking about the holiday blues, it's going to be milder and it will typically subside within a short period of time after the holidays are over. So before we keep talking about the holiday blues, I want to just say, there is a time to seek help if you feel like what's going on for you is beyond that, right? So if you are feeling consistently very sad, very anxious, a lot of tearfulness, a lot of physical complaints to sort of go with the mood challenges, as well as experiencing a significant change in your sleep, a feeling of hopelessness, or really struggling to do daily tasks that normally are not so tough for you, it might be good to talk to your doctor or a mental health professional. And I will say that we're going to share at the end of the presentation the contact info for the Mental Health and Wellness Center if you want to reach out to us. So what are the causes? There are so many factors, right? So one thing is we all know that it's tougher in the winter when we have shorter days, less daylight, that it throws off our biological clock, right? So we're getting less serotonin and melatonin in the brain. And those are the things that really support mood and sleep. Financial difficulties, that is not always new, right, during this time of year, but there can be an added level of pressure depending on your circumstances during the pandemic. Unrealistic expectations. I think that's something that everyone is having to adjust this year as we figure out what the holidays look like during a pandemic. Feeling that lack of support or isolation because of what's going on. And then we sort of have both, right? Stress from family gatherings and having to do that and all that comes with it, and maybe not being able to have that and really wanting that or needing that support. As well as just nostalgia for years in the past and maybe grief that is related to the holidays. So maybe this feeling isn't new for some of us, and the holidays sort of compounded with the pandemic are really magnifying those things. So I'm wondering, I know, so in the beginning, some of you have said, this is not a new experience for you. So I'm wondering, for those of you who have experienced the holiday blues or are feeling this way right now, if you can identify what is contributing to that feeling for you. And you're welcome to share, but you don't have to. This can also just be a place to pause and have a moment of reflection for yourself. Maybe one of those things on the list that I just mentioned resonates for you. And maybe you don't know, and it just feels tough this year. That's fine too. But you're welcome to share if you would like to put it in the chat.
Oh,
and go ahead.
Sorry, Francesca, I added in the chat, but I'll share here. Loss and missing a loved one, or or in many cases, like several loved ones that used to, celebrate with, and especially with all the family being together. I think that's it becomes more pronounced during this time. And I also added pressure to do too much. Seems like there's always so much more to do. And every year I go into it saying like, oh, I want to do this year, I want to do that this year, and it just never seems to there never seems to be enough time in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So
those are really important points.
Yeah, it was also added in the chat, unable to see family and friends in person, definitely, and loss of family members as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So how can we cope, right? There are many ways, and I would imagine that a lot of the things on this list are not necessarily new information. And it's more a matter of choosing something and trying it, or sticking to something that you know works. And so ideas that we have put up are creating a routine and engaging in a ritual, which we'll talk about a bit later. Redefining what the holiday means to you, right? So it just might be different this year, and to not be overwhelmed by what our preconceived notions are about what it has to be. Connecting digitally and spending time with loved ones, right? So I know sometimes there can be a feeling of Zoom burnout. We talk about that a lot. And that is certainly very real. And I would also encourage us, if we're feeling this, to figure out a way to connect. Maybe it is a phone call instead, or maybe it's a short Zoom to connect, right? Maybe it's doing the same activity, like watching a movie. We're both going to watch this movie on the same day, and we don't have to, necessarily be having this time together on Zoom, but just to know that you're doing something and other people are doing it with you. Engaging in hobbies or activities that make you happy, even if they're not necessarily of the season. And then we'll go over some mindfulness and grounding techniques later. Exercising and being active. So I like to say moving your body, right? Sometimes the word exercise can have connotations that go along with it. So whatever it feels good to do with you, moving your body can be useful. And reaching out when you're struggling. So that can be really tough. The hope is that doing things like this can sort of facilitate a way to reach out, maybe give you some language. And again, we're always, the Mental Health and Wellness Center is here to be supportive if that's something you need support around. Listening to your mind and body, and recognizing your limits and allowing yourself to say no. So maybe, right, it's the opposite side of the spectrum. Somebody wants to do a bunch of Zooms with you and it feels like too much. It's okay to say, no, that's beyond what I can do right now, or what I want to do. So creating routine and ritual, right? So I had that on the last slide. Asking yourself, what has worked for me in the past, right? So all of us know we need to sleep. It's useful to just be watching that you're getting nutrients for your body, maintaining hygiene, doing things that are useful to you for self-care. focusing on what you can control. I think it's very easy right now to focus on things that are outside of our control, right? Things that we can't do, things that are up in the air, which can create that feeling of anxiety or indecision because there's so much up in the air. So what if we were to instead focus on what we can control, right? Or even make a list of those things, because sometimes it feels limited. But usually once I start to make a list of things I can control, there's actually more than I would imagine, right? If I were to just sort of quickly think about that. Don't forget breaks and fun downtime. Being honest and gentle with yourself. And I want to say for creating routines and rituals that it can also be something very simple. So sometimes this period between Thanksgiving and New Year's can all just feel kind of like a blur. Time is just going by very quickly. What day is it? What month is it? And so having a ritual that sort of grounds you and creates some structure can be really supportive, right? So it can be, again, really simple things like I'm going to listen to a guided imagery meditation for 5 minutes or 1 minute every morning. And, before I go to sleep at night, I'm going to go around my house and maybe, unplug lights if you have decorations up. It doesn't have to be an elaborate self-care routine. I think it's often easier and feels like less pressure if it is something simple and it feels like you can achieve it on a daily basis. So things to avoid, right? I have isolating yourself further and withdrawing. So it's sort of a fine balance, right? Between preserving your energy and saying no, and also staying connected to people. That's important. So spending too much time alone or in bed, that sort of goes back to the real importance of structure and creating something for us that marks time, right? To know this is the beginning of the day, this is the end of the day. Sometimes it's useful to say this is the middle of the day. Or even things to sort of benchmark, like this is the beginning of my work week and this is the end of my work week, right? This is the beginning of the weekend. This is the end of the weekend. Everybody needs a different boundaries, but to make sure that you have some boundaries in place so things don't sort of blur together. That can sort of add to this feeling of depression. So neglecting personal hygiene and nutrition, I think that can also be tough, right? Because that can be the nutrition piece and what I have after it, the overeating or the binging for comfort, right? Like that can provide an immediate sense of relief or comfort. But overall, what are things we can do that are going to be supportive to my mental health and to my body functioning well? And that might be a great thing to incorporate into routine, right? I'm going to make sure that on these days I eat these grain things, or on these days I'm going to do this thing that I need to do for my personal hygiene. And then we also have substances to numb negative emotions, which is also a challenge sometimes during the holidays. Can be a real temptation, but knowing that substances can often have the opposite effect, right? If we use them to excess and cause more depression, more anxiety, certainly interferes with your ability to sleep, weakens your immune system and things like that. So just being really mindful of the intake. So this is the time that we're going to do some grounding exercises. There's one that I want to go over with everyone so that you can use it on your own. And the others we can sort of just talk about. So for the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise for anxiety, this is one that I like to talk about with clients when there's a feeling of just sort of spinning out of control with thoughts, ruminating on things that are negative or things that don't feel helpful, or maybe a feeling of dissociation or sort of feeling like I'm not here, I really like this exercise. So I know that we're off camera. If you want to do it along with me, that would be great. Essentially, what you'll want to do is just find a comfortable position, and you can close your eyes, you can open your eyes, whatever feels good to you. And just maybe start by taking a couple of deep belly breaths. So what I like to do is just put my hand on my stomach and sometimes one on my chest too, to make sure that I'm really taking a deep breath and not having shallow breaths, which can make us more anxious. But to put your hand on your belly and just start to, you can breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, and just take a couple of these deep breaths. And so the numbers in this grounding exercise are going to refer to your senses and things that we're counting and looking for to ground us in this present moment. So for 5, what we're going to do is we're going to be looking for 5 things that we can see. So anything that is in your environment or even within yourself, right? So this can be like, I can see the blue wall in front of me. I can see my hair. I can see the ground, right? It can be objects. It can be something that is on or within you. And name 5 of those things. And then we move to 4, right? So once you've identified 5 things, 4. Okay, what are 4 things that I can feel? So, right, it might be, I can feel my sweater, it's soft. I can feel my hair, it's sort of dry. I can feel my skin. I can feel the ground beneath my feet. That's usually a really useful one to just like put some pressure and feel the ground. And let's see, what's one more? I can feel the smooth computer in front of me. So once you've identified 4 things, you can move to 3. So what are 3 things that you can hear? This can be something that you hear outside. Maybe you are outside. This can be something you hear within you. I hear my breathing. I hear my heartbeat. I hear my stomach digesting. I hear traffic outside, right? And then you can move to 2. So 2 is, what are 2 things that you can smell? So there might be scents in the room, right? There might be a candle lit. There might be someone cooking. There might be the smell, unpleasant smells as well, right? Like trash outside, depending on where you live. There might be not so many things in your environment. And so then you can think of 2 things, 2 scents, 2 odors that you like, right? You can do this if you imaginally as well, right? So you can close your eyes and think about these things. And then finally, 1 thing that you're able to taste. So that might be something that you just ate. That might be a piece of, if you have something near you, right, that you can eat, or if you have a piece of gum or a mint, something that sort of wakes you up, or it can just be whatever taste is in your mouth, just taking a second to sort of notice it and be intentional. And so the goal is, by the time that you've gone through all of those things, you feel more present, more here, and less attention has been given to those thoughts that are sort of spiraling out, those things that are not happening right now. So that's something that you can use wherever you are. And like I said, you can do it even if you're in a public place, not that we're doing that so much right now, with your eyes closed, and you can sort of think through those things too. There are also so many wonderful guided meditations that are available to us. So there are different apps that you can use. There's the Calm app. There's a breathwork app. Some of those require subscriptions or payment, but YouTube videos are free. I think we on our channel have some that could be useful. But if you just look up guided meditation, guided imagery, those are there are plenty of options. And you'll often find someone with a very calm, soothing voice sort of walking you through an exercise that helps you to get really present and notice what's going on in your body. And those are really great if you're feeling very physiologically aroused, right? If you're feeling anxious or stressed, or you feel the tension in your body, those are really useful. And then I also just wanted to talk about TIP because it's one of my favorites and I just love it. So this is also for that feeling of overwhelm or anxiety. TIP is just an acronym to remember these things that you can do if you're feeling the anxiety in your body. And I like this one for myself and also for clients have offered feedback that it's useful in moments where maybe you don't know why you're anxious, but you just feel it in your body and you can't really identify why. So something to do when that's coming up for you. So the T stands for temperature change. So this is great right now for the winter because cooler is usually better for this, right? So often, when we're feeling anxious, we'll feel heated. We'll start to sweat. You might have like sweating palms. So T for temperature change can be maybe you can step outside for a minute or longer. Maybe you can just open a window and feel a cool breeze or stick your head out the window, right? Something to sort of just get that cool air on you. And also it could be the opposite if you needed it to, right? Like maybe you can take a hot shower if you need. The I stands for intense exercise. So what this is going to do is just change the way that you're breathing, right? So if your breathing is a little shallow or a little bit irregular, this will sort of begin to regulate it again. So that looks differently for everybody, right? So intense exercise for one person might be, I'm going to do, 10 or 15 jumping jacks. For other people, you might need to do a lot more to really get your breath to change. Then next we have present-minded awareness, which is a little bit like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that we went over. So present-minded awareness, you can think about what are 5 things I can see? What are 4 things I can feel or touch? And sort of go through that. Begin to just become aware of the environment and what's going on around you. And then the other P we have is for progressive muscle relaxation. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this or have done this before, but what you can do with progressive muscle relaxation is start all the way at the bottom or all the way at the top with your neck and shoulders or with your feet and legs. And what you'll begin to do is just tense up every muscle really, really, really tightly and hold it for 10 seconds or so, and then release it and stretch it out. There are a lot of wonderful guided meditations doing this progressive muscle relaxation on YouTube as well. So to have someone walk you through it maybe for the first time can be helpful, but you can sort of go through and do that with every major muscle group, right? You can do your hands, you can do your biceps and your triceps, any way that you're tightening a muscle and holding it and then releasing it. And so what I would say for tip is to sort of start with the T and see if that's enough, right? Maybe a temperature change is all you needed to sort of feel less anxious or less overwhelmed. And maybe if that doesn't feel quite enough, you can go to the I and then the first P and then the second P, right? If you need to go through all of those. But that's just a quick acronym that I really like to use. I think it's easy to remember and something that you generally will have access to. And so those are some of my personal favorites. I would like to offer, if you want to, in the chat to just put if you've done any of these things before, or maybe if any of those sounded particularly interesting to you, you can share that with us. Or maybe if you did the grounding exercise, looking for things in your environment, you can share how that was for you.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is one of my favorite grounding techniques, especially when I'm very stressed and I take a few minutes to do it and I really start to consider the things that I'm looking at, the things that I'm hearing, the things that I'm feeling. And I'm like, is it cold? Is it smooth? And really, I'm really getting the experience of the senses. It really does help me get back into the moment. Some of the other comments in the chat here, so someone said that they've done progressive muscle relaxation. It's helped her. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise is great. And someone's used the My Life app. It used to be called Stop, Breathe, and Think. A great app. And someone's going to try the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So as we sort of wind down, I want to ask what has helped everyone cope with the holiday blues. Because while we've sort of offered different things to think about, the chances are, right, that you're coping with it right now, if that's something you're experiencing, or if it's something you've experienced in years past, what has helped you, right? Sometimes we don't always think, oh, what I'm doing right now is a coping mechanism, but we intrinsically know this is what feels good to me right now. This is what feels supportive. And so I'm wondering if there are things either on the list that we shared with you or things that you know from your own personal experience that feel really helpful. You're more than welcome to share those as well, especially if they're new, because somebody else in the group might really benefit from trying that. So I think, let me think about this for me, what has helped cope with the holiday blues. Yeah, that's a good question. Something for me that has really helped is just putting up a small tree. I celebrate Christmas, and I just think the tree is really beautiful. So I make that part of my routine, my ritual that I mentioned earlier, because I find ritual very grounding. So right in the morning, it's part of my routine that I'm going to go and I'm going to plug it in and I'm going to like fluff up the branches. And at the end of the day, I'm going to go and I'm going to unplug it. I'm going to unplug whatever other lights I might have. And that's sort of my closing down for the day. And it sounds very simple, but it helps me sort of mark time, right? Okay, this day is over. Tomorrow, new day, tree goes on. Yeah, that sounds, oh, go ahead, Dr. Brady.
So there's something very joyful in the lights, and I was actually going to add something similar, like when we have the time change and it starts to get dark so early, and it's like feels like it's always dark because like start work in the dark, finish work and it's dark, and it's like always just seems dark. So I always really look forward to a little bit of a reprieve from that when Thanksgiving's over and everyone puts up holiday lights in the streets. And I always make it a tradition to decorate the weekend after Thanksgiving so that I can bring some of the colors into my home, because I'm not typically a red and green and bright kind of person in my home, but there's something about this month that makes it feel so warm and cozy and comforting, and brings a little bit of energy, I think, to that too. So that is something that's always helped me fight off the holiday blues, but also like the winter blues in general. And I think that that's something that's really important, just like the lights. And, I think maybe it's something to consider incorporating more of.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to add in the chat, we have baking or decorating for the holidays, being immersed in creativity, it helps. Absolutely. Being creative is such an amazing way to stay engaged with the holiday season and kind of stimulate your mind, and kind of keeps you active and engaged and keeps you out of bed usually, and makes you excited to kind of have projects to work on. So I completely agree with the creativity there. I think that's so important.
I really appreciate that. Yeah. As you were talking, Dr. Brady, I was thinking, what else? I think I'm thinking more about it as the winter blues than holiday blues, because the darkness is, it does feel dark outside all the time. But I was thinking, you know, I really like to light candles, and scent really helps me, right? If I like the aroma, I feel like, oh, the space is more inviting to me and it feels less dark. And even within that, right, I get to choose what scent, I get to choose what candle I light, and even that small thing of this is something that I have control over, um, feels good, feels sort of empowering, even though it is also very tiny. But that's something that I do, right? I just intrinsically know that makes me feel better, even if I'm not thinking about it as a coping mechanism necessarily.
Someone
Yeah.
sticking to small traditions,
Mhm.
watching certain movies and enjoying Starbucks holiday drinks. Yeah.
Yes, I support that. Yeah, right. And I like that because it's right. Maybe it's something that you did last year and something that, you know, you'll be able to do next year. So I like the continuity of that, sort of like a past ritual.
And
Yeah.
these traditions really give us something to look forward to. And a lot of the things that we're talking about here, as we're going through this, I'm kind of noticing is sometimes they feel like double-edged swords, like
Mm.
something to look forward to, and they're positive things and they're happy things, but sometimes they can also feel difficult. I know after experiencing some significant losses, the holidays felt very difficult because I wanted to do the small traditions. I wanted to do, watch a movie or, certain things. And then it would almost make memories come back up. And I think that's one thing that maybe we can talk a little bit more about is like how to cope with like those memories of past times when you're longing for a pastime or experiencing something difficult when trying to engage in these traditions. You talked a lot about how to combat those feelings of like, trying to stay active, staying out of bed, don't let them bring you down. One thing I would want to add there is trying to change the way that you think about the memory from something,
Mm.
or the tradition or the things you associate it with, and instead of saying I don't have this anymore, changing it to more of a gratitude that you did have that time and that you did have those memories and those memories can never go away,
Mm.
and using that to kind of cope with the sadness, because I know a lot of us said loss in the beginning, and understanding that, so Francesca, you rightfully talked about finding what you do have control over, but also acknowledging what we don't have control over. And one of the things that we don't have control over is our experience of loss, and we can't do anything about that. We can't change that, but what we can do is find the control that we have over the way that we experience that, the memories that we have, how we perceive them, um, and how we interact with those memories and those feelings when they do come up, and kind of acknowledging that they're there, and then trying to create something positive from that, like reminiscing on positive times that you had.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm also thinking, you know, when we're talking about keeping with traditions that might have been started with people who are not necessarily here, um, that there can be feelings of guilt that come up around like, I have to do this because we always did this, but I don't necessarily want to do this or have the energy, or it makes me sad. Um, and I think that can be an important thing to acknowledge as well. Um, if you need to take a break from something, doesn't mean you won't do it again. Doesn't mean it wasn't important to you and you didn't value it. Um, that's something that I've been thinking about as well, because I know that we're talking about, like, you know, someone said baking, and I'm talking about, oh, I put up a tree, right? For many of us, like that sounds overwhelming to even to do those things, right? Some of us are not decorating. Some of us, it just doesn't feel possible right now, or like something we want to do. Um, and I think, yeah, if I haven't been clear in saying like that, that's really, really okay. And if the supportive thing is to not engage in holiday stuff, like, that's more than okay too. Yeah.
So we have two great comments related to each other in the chat here. So one person said, it's helpful for me to consciously push myself to reach out to friends more. Sometimes I
Mm.
don't realize how much being social helps me, even just texting with phone conversation, etc. And then another person replied to that saying, when I push myself to reach out to people, even if it's just a text, I find I'm glad I did. And I feel good because I know that that person probably appreciated it and was glad to hear from me. My advice is do not wait for others to reach out to you, reach out to them.
Mm.
Comments, Francesca, I'll let you respond to those.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really smart thing to know about yourself, right? That even though there might be some anxiety up front about doing this thing, that typically when you do this thing, you feel really good afterwards. Um, Sometimes remembering that can help us get through the initial part of the anxiety around it, right? And so then maybe you do use one of the tools that we talked about, or maybe just the knowing, like, I'm going to feel better after I do this is helpful enough. But that's a really great thing to pick up on about yourself. Um, and I love that secondary idea, right? If it is within your capacity to reach out to others, especially right now when many people feel isolated, that's awesome.
And I think so. A lot of it is anxiety in reaching out, and I think a lot of it is being overwhelmed and having too much going on. I know that for me, that's a struggle in reaching out to others, or even getting back to people who reach out to me. And I think remembering here that I will feel better having that interaction, or I'll appreciate that communication. Um, I think that's so important to make time for, and to be intentional about and be present when doing so. It's I know for me, if um, someone sends over a text or something like that, and I'm in the middle of my workday, it's probably like a quick response and like put my phone down and forget about it. And I'm not being intentional about that. I think working to be more intentional and present in our communication too can really make us appreciate that interaction so much more, especially during these times of COVID and isolation, and where we're celebrating a lot at a distance, where we're not used to doing that, can be really helpful.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm wondering, if the idea of getting back to people, right? Because that, again, I am with you. It can be so overwhelming. I'm like, I thought I replied to that. Now it's been 5 days. If maybe that can be a part of, a ritual. Like at the end of the day, I'm just going to, set aside 10 minutes and it's going to be part of my ritual to just see who do I need to get back to, right? Like who does it feel good to communicate with? And make it work for whatever the structure of your life is right now.
So the next comment in the chat is volunteering and helping those in need is something that always makes me feel better. So we just talked about communicating with others and connecting with others. Now I'm talking a little bit about giving back to others. And I think that is such an important part of the holiday season and what this is all about.
Yeah, I think, feedback that I hear from people who volunteer is always that it's almost like self-care, right? You're there to serve other people, but there's a sense of it being really restorative for you as well. I think especially right now, when it feels like there is a lot out of our control. That's something that we can do if we have the capacity. So that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Another thing that I think helps me with the holiday blues, that's another double-edged sword for me, is gift giving. It's something that always makes me feel really good, to find this special gift or really think about the people who are important to me and who are in my life and, mean something to me, and find something to gift them during this holiday season. And then at the same time, that does come with a lot of stress as well. Financially, it's always a time crunch. I think that's the hardest part for me. It's always like, oh my God, it's December 22nd and I have to start shopping. So that's literally what happens every year. And, I think as stressful as it is, like when it's all said and done and like people appreciate it, or like, you nailed the gift, like when you really, like, it's meaningful and it's and thoughtful and really represents them, like it always feels really good. And in the chat, someone said, same here, gift giving always makes me feel good and brings me joy when I see them open it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. There's a feeling of like, I want to find a gift that really makes you feel seen and heard, and just something that will be meaningful, like you said, to you. And then there's like an immense pressure that I can put on myself unnecessarily, because people in general, I find, are just grateful that you thought of them. Yeah, that can be a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm wondering, we have about a couple minutes left. I'll click this just so. I just want to put up the contact information in case anybody does want to, contact the Mental Health and Wellness Center. Like Dr. Brady said, we provide lots of services, and are glad that, we could be doing this with you all tonight. So I guess I just want to open it up. If there are any questions more broadly, or if there's more, there's always more to discuss about, this topic tonight. Yeah.
And if you feel comfortable and you'd like to take yourself off mute to join in the discussion, if it feels easier, feel free to do that as well.
Yeah. Thank you for, being so engaged in all of your ideas. It certainly has given me things to think and reflect on. Dr. Brady, is there any sort of closing words or final thoughts that we want to say?
I think what I would like to reflect on based on what we've talked about is just really take the time for yourself and remember that putting yourself first is important during this time as well, even though this is a time about a time surrounded by connecting with others, and also coupled with a lot of stress from what we're going through this year specifically. Just remember to be kind to yourself, and to not place unnecessary pressure on yourself. If you are asked to do things that you don't feel safe with, be okay with acknowledging that you're not okay with doing those things. And, if you don't have the means to do something, it's okay. If you want to do something for yourself, that's okay too. Just be kind to yourself during these times. I know there's a lot of pressure placed on this year, and all of us are under different strains than we've ever been used to experiencing before. So just to kind of listen to yourself. If you need to rest. If you need to eat. If you need to move, I know that's a big thing for me. I neglect my physical movement. If you need to exercise, if you need to move, you need to get up and do something, you need to take a break from the computer, do that. The one thing I think that helps us successfully beat the holiday blues is when we get into January and we're doing okay. Tackle the rest of the winter from a good standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
It's in the chat. I like the idea on focusing. I like the idea of focusing on what we can control, even if it's something small. Absolutely.
That's something I'm certainly focusing on a lot this season, right? It might not be like, the things that I normally want to do and places I get to go with these people, right? It really might just be like I get to decorate my tiny tree and turn it on and off every day. And that is smaller than maybe I would normally do things, but it's okay. It still makes me happy. Yeah, thinking smaller and being intentional. That's what I'm taking from this for this period of time.
Definitely. And you feel so much better when you realize that you do have things under your control, when you feel like spinning out of control. Just finding that small little thing is so rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all for being with us and for sharing. If you have any, oh, hi.
Oh, please continue. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say if you have any last minute thoughts or questions, you can put it in the chat. Otherwise, you have our contact information. But it was good to be with all of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Francesca, for a wonderful program, Kellyanne for supervising as well, and to Molloy for bringing us these really important programs every season. You guys really make such great points, and it's so helpful to our community, and it's great that it's recorded too, so that anyone can catch it at a later time whenever they need. You gave really good strategies, and the discussion was really good. So thank you again for everyone who participated.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. We truly appreciate you being here, and we're glad to connect with the community through Oceanside Library. We're so thankful for you.
Thank you, guys. Here, let me end the recording here.